A wooden coffin lay nestled between gnarled tree roots, pristine and untouched by time. Its lacquered surface glistened beneath a skin of moss, too smooth for rot, too clean for the forest floor. Around it, the birds refused to sing. The wind stilled. Then, soft as breath, came a slow exhale from inside, steady and human. The breath inside slowed to match his own. Something inside tapped, twice, then fell silent. The forest had never made him nervous, until it followed him home. Elias Granger had walked the Black Pine Reserve for 18 years, boots breaking frost in winter, eyes scanning tree lines in spring. He knew every path, every crooked branch, every rock that jutted too high from the soil. The forest was a second home. It had its moods, yes, misty and silent some mornings, lively and sharp others, but it never made him feel watched. Until today. He found it while clearing a storm-felled pine near the northern slope. The moss had shifted oddly, clinging not to bark or stone, but to something flat and uniform. Elias swept his glove across it once, then twice. Beneath the green fuzz was polished wood. Rectangular. Smooth. The corners unnaturally crisp. A coffin. At first, he cursed. Then laughed. Probably an old prank, teens or hunters trying to scare someone off. But the more he looked, the less sense it made. The coffin was embedded. Not placed. Not hidden. Grown into the forest floor like a root system had made room for it. No rot, no dirt wear. No animal scratching. Just perfect, glowing wood. He crouched. Set his palm flat against the lid. And felt it. A pulse. Not vibration. Not temperature. A rhythm, slow, deep, living. He jerked his hand back, breath caught behind his teeth. But curiosity overruled fear. He pressed again. As his palm lingered on the coffin, the pulse beneath it crawled into his wrist. It reminded him of the steady hospital monitor he'd silenced the night his mother died. Now, the same rhythm throbbed inside the wood, following him as he stepped away. Something primal shifted in his gut. He stood up too fast, stumbled backward, boot catching a root. Wind shifted, if it was wind. A pressure, maybe. The forest around him, once familiar, now felt angled. Slightly turned. Like all the trees had pivoted just enough to focus on him. Elias turned and walked. Not ran. Not yet. Each step cracked twigs. But another set of steps cracked after his, perfectly timed. He stopped. So did the sound. He walked faster. So did it. By the time he reached his truck, parked a mile and a half down the trail, sweat had soaked through his undershirt despite the cool air. His keys shook as he slid them into the ignition. The engine coughed, caught, and purred to life. Only when he pulled onto the gravel access road did he dare glance back. Nothing followed him out of the forest. But the sound, the rhythm, remained. It echoed in the wheel well. In the tick of the turn signal. In the tightness of his chest. He slammed the radio on. Static blared. It matched the rhythm exactly. He ran from the forest, but the sound didn't stay behind. Memory plays cruel tricks, unless the forest helps it along. Elias didn't sleep that night. The pulse hadn't left him. He felt it in his wrist, where he'd touched the coffin. In his temple, beating beside each thought. When he closed his eyes, he didn't see dreams, he saw grainy wood in the dark, breathing like lungs. The next morning, he packed a crowbar, gloves, and a portable floodlight. The forest met him with silence. Not empty, waiting. The trail to the northern slope should have been half overgrown, but the path he'd walked yesterday was unnaturally clear now. The pine he'd cleared was gone, rolled aside like it had never fallen. But the coffin was still there, untouched. Gleaming faintly. He crouched, placed the floodlight against a branch, and breathed out. Then slid his gloves on. "No more games," he muttered. The crowbar sank into the coffin seam too easily. No nails. No resistance. Like it wanted to open. He lifted the lid slowly. Inside, no body. No clothes. No rot. Just soil, rich, black, fine as silt. Packed neatly to the edges. His breath caught. His fingers curled into fists. There was something buried in the soil. He brushed it gently. The dirt parted like breath on glass, revealing metal beneath, thin, polished. A bracelet. Silver. Delicate. He knew it before he picked it up. His mother's name. Anna Granger. Curved into the metal with tiny etched letters. Her birth year, 1939. The bracelet she'd worn every day until the cancer took her. The bracelet they had buried with her, in a coffin of her own. Elias stared. The soil trembled around his knuckles. Soil clung to the silver like damp ash, the same smell that haunted her coffin 40 years ago. He stumbled back from the box, nearly toppling the light. The bracelet swung in his hand, warm as breath. His glove came off without him realizing. The silver touched his skin. Images hit like lightning. A hospital room. The green monitor flashing. His mother's final exhale. His hand reaching, too late, to silence the machine. The bracelet sliding off her wrist as they closed the lid. He'd never told anyone that moment. Never spoken of it, not even in grief. And here it was, warm and real, in a coffin that shouldn't exist, on land no one had touched in decades. He looked back into the soil. It had shifted. Like something beneath it had taken a breath. He reached in again. Dug deeper. More soil. Just soil. But it didn't feel like a container anymore. It felt like skin. The wood beneath his knees pulsed again, faster now. Matching his heart. He dropped the bracelet and slammed the lid shut. The coffin creaked, not from pressure, but from disappointment. He staggered to his feet, heart racing, the smell of funeral ash still stuck to his gloves. This wasn't grief. This was wrong. As he turned to leave, something creaked behind him. Not the trees. Not the branches. The coffin. Shifting. Settling. Breathing. He didn't wait to see if it opened again. The bracelet hadn't been seen since the day of her funeral. Some coffins lie still, others knock back. Elias didn't trust his memory anymore. He laid the silver bracelet on his kitchen counter and stared at it for an hour. Every so often, it would seem to gleam brighter, as if catching a light that wasn't there. He needed someone else to see it. To hear it. He called Lena. Lena Cho wasn't just a botanist, she was practical, grounded, and didn't believe in ghosts. That's why he trusted her. 2 hours later, they stood side by side on the forest slope, sun catching in Lena's dark hair as she crouched near the coffin. She ran gloved fingers along the bark of a nearby pine. "This tree's older than my grandmother," she murmured. "But its roots curve around the box like they grew yesterday." Elias nodded. "It wasn't here a month ago." She looked up at him. "And you're sure it's a coffin? Check for yourself." She didn't flinch when he lifted the lid. Her mouth tightened when she saw the soil. "Look ceremonial," she said. "Like a ritual box. Soil's too rich. Could be symbolic burial, ashes to earth." "No," Elias said. "I've seen that soil before. Smelled it." She raised an eyebrow. He didn't explain. Instead, he tapped the side of the coffin with his knuckle. Knock. The sound echoed inward. Deep. Hollow. Like the forest swallowed it whole. Lena tilted her head. Cavern beneath? He knocked again. Knock. Knock. The same pattern came back, 2 knocks, soft but exact. Did you? No, Elias whispered. Lena forced a laugh when the first knock echoed back, but the second time her smile collapsed. The echo repeated her exact rhythm, like a mocking child. Her eyes darted to Elias, wide, wet, and terrified. He turned to her, voice low. You heard that, right? She stepped back from the box, brushing dirt from her hands that shook too much to finish. Tree roots don't do that. Neither do graves, he said. She crouched, scraped some soil away from the coffin's base with a trowel. No gap. It's not sitting on the ground, she muttered. It's in it. Fused. She dug deeper, then stopped. What is it? Elias asked. She gestured. The wood underneath wasn't flat, it bulged slightly. Rounded. As if the box had a spine. For the first time in 20 years of patrols, Elias whispered, I wish I hadn't returned. Lena stood. It's warm. The wood. Feel it. He touched the side. Still pulsing. Still warm. Knock. One echo. Then another. This time, it didn't mimic. It changed the rhythm, responding. Knock. Pause. Knock knock. Pause. Knock knock knock. Like a conversation. Elias stepped back. We should stop. Lena hesitated. But what if? Knock knock. Louder. The floodlight beside them flickered. Then, nothing. Wind blew through the trees. Leaves scattered. The forest resumed its breath, as if nothing had happened. But neither of them spoke. Neither of them moved. The forest had blinked. And they had blinked with it. Would you keep testing, or walk away? As they touched the wood again, it tapped back, harder, faster, like a response. The forest drew a crowd, but only a few dared stay near. By the end of the week, half the town had heard about the coffin in the pines. Most came for curiosity. Some brought cameras. A few brought holy water. Elias hated them all for it. Lena had kept the location vague, but someone leaked GPS pins. Soon, hikers were snapping selfies by the moss-covered box, laughing nervously as they tapped on the lid and listened for echoes. The forest didn't answer them. It had already chosen who to speak to. By day 3, 2 podcasters arrived with wireless mics and a drone. They called it the Heartwood Crypt, live-streamed their investigation, and promised subscribers a midnight unsealing. They didn't last the night. Their drone crashed. One of them went silent on air, then screamed off camera. They left town the next morning, without their gear, without a word. Lena begged Elias to stay quiet. Let it go. Let it rot. But he couldn't. Because every time he checked the box, the soil inside had changed. Not moved, changed. New patterns. New indentations. Once, a folded piece of paper, blank. Once, a strand of hair, white, brittle, and familiar. He stopped sleeping altogether. One afternoon, a university archaeologist named Dr. Harlan came with a team, claiming to be investigating subterranean anomalies in spiritual burial rites. Elias let them through. He watched from a distance as they ran ground-penetrating radar along the routes. Until something went wrong. The scanner buzzed, then howled, then snapped sideways, slamming into the coffin's lid with enough force to split its casing. Before anyone spoke, a tremor rippled through the ground. Elias staggered back, because he didn't just feel it beneath his boots. He felt it in his chest, as if the earth and his body shared the same heartbeat. The team froze. Dust spiraled from the pine branches above. Dr. Harlan stared at the scanner, then at Elias. There's something under it. Not natural. A chamber? A void? From the edge of the crowd, a voice croaked. It wasn't buried, said an old man with a limp and sunken eyes. No one knew his name. It was planted, waiting to grow. Everyone turned. He stepped forward. You think coffins are for the dead. But this one's for remembering. Elias stared at him. Remembering what? The man didn't answer. He just pointed to the coffin. It remembered you. That night, Elias went back alone. He brought no tools. No lights. Just the bracelet, in his coat pocket. The forest was colder now. Even the moss seemed stiff underfoot. The coffin gleamed, half swallowed in shadow. Silent. He sat beside it. Pressed his palm to the lid again. The pulse returned instantly, slower now. Like it was resting. He took the bracelet out. Laid it in the dirt beside the coffin. Then something inside knocked, once. It felt like permission. Something older than the coffin had already been buried beneath it, still waiting. Photographs shouldn't exist before a life begins. Lena didn't want to return, but she came anyway. Something had changed in her. Her skepticism was gone, burned away by whatever echoed back at her that day. She barely spoke now, only watched the trees as if they might bend toward her when she turned away. They returned to the site in silence, stepping over trampled ferns and discarded water bottles from the week's crowd. The forest had already begun reclaiming them. The coffin was exactly where they'd left it, but different. The moss around it had curled back, exposing the full length of the wood. The lid bore shallow lines now, scratches that hadn't been there before. Elias wiped them clean with his sleeve. Eyes. Dozens of them. Carved into the lid in spiraled patterns, lids open wide, unblinking. What does it want? Lena whispered. Elias didn't answer. He slid his fingers under the lid and lifted. No resistance. No sound. Inside, the soil was gone. Instead, a lining of stitched silk, its edges frayed, its color wrong, deep green, like leaves rotting in moonlight. The stitches were rough, but deliberate, forming more open eyes, staring in every direction. And then, photos. Black and white. Dozens. All tucked into the silk like offerings. He picked one up. A woman standing by a lake. Her eyes had been scratched out. Another, a man sitting on a porch. Same treatment. No names. But the faces were familiar. Not to memory, but to instinct. Locals. Shopkeepers. Neighbors. Some long dead. Some still alive. Elias froze. The third photo showed Lena. She looked younger. Maybe high school. Her eyes gouged out by something sharp. She inhaled sharply and stepped back. Elias reached for another. This one made his breath stop cold. It showed a woman holding a baby in her lap. She was seated in a worn armchair, in a room with peeling wallpaper Elias hadn't seen in decades, but knew. Because he'd taken his first steps in that room. Because the woman was his mother. And the child, barely one, was him. But the photo was dated 1978. He was born in 1979. His stomach turned. His legs threatened to give out. Elias's throat closed, he couldn't breathe. The boy in the photo smiled in his mother's arms, but the smile was his. He flipped it over. The back read only, "Remember what was promised." His hand shook. "Lena," he whispered. This was before I existed." She didn't answer. She was staring at the silk lining. One of the stitched eyes was moving, slowly. The thread twitching. Beneath the photos, the fabric shifted. Soil returned, rising up like breath. Then something pushed from beneath. A lump. Smooth. Rounded. Elias reached down with trembling fingers and lifted it. A pocket watch. It was cracked, old. The glass fractured like a spiderweb. Inside was a photo, this time color. Of his father. Dead 20 years. The hands on the watch were spinning backward. Elias dropped it. The soil absorbed it instantly, like water soaking into sponge. Then the entire coffin exhaled. A rush of air that smelled like old dust, hospital corridors, pine sap, and iron. The silk rippled. More photos surfaced. He didn't want to look anymore. But he couldn't stop. What would you do if you found this? Beneath the photo layer, the soil rose in slow, shallow breaths. What grows under roots doesn't always belong to trees. Elias didn't speak on the hike back. Lena followed behind, slower now, her eyes flicking to every tree like they might reach out. The bracelet stayed in his pocket. The photograph of his mother and the baby version of himself stayed in his mind, burned in perfect, impossible detail. They returned to the coffin at dawn. No more onlookers. No more curiosity seekers. Just silence. And the smell. It was stronger now, earth and rot, yes, but also metal, ozone, and something like memory, something aged and sick-sweet, like wilted flowers sealed in plastic wrap. They brought tools this time. Elias scraped at the edge of the coffin while Lena brushed soil from the surrounding root bed. The more they dug, the worse the silence became. Not absence of sound, the pressure of it. Like something was holding its breath beneath them. 4 inches down, the coffin's base curved. 6 inches down, the curve widened. At 10 inches, Elias stopped. It wasn't a coffin. Not in the traditional sense. The box extended, too long to match its lid. And underneath, the wood wasn't flat, it was ribbed, bulging at unnatural angles. Almost like it was made of bone? Lena whispered. Elias said nothing. His hands were shaking again. They cleared the entire underside, revealing a stone surface beneath the earth, smooth and pale gray, but not uniform. Names. Rows of them, etched with crude tools. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Every name etched into the stone matched a missing face from the photographs. But the letters weren't carved clean, they bled moisture, slick and glistening like open wounds. Elias traced one with his fingertip. It vibrated. He jerked back. The stone shivered where he'd touched it. Lena dropped her brush. "Did you feel that?" she asked. He didn't answer. Because the earth had just pulsed again, stronger. A sound broke through the trees. Not a branch. Not wind. A groan, deep and ancient. Like something stretching after too long underground. Lena stepped closer to the etched stone. Her name wasn't scratched in like the others. It was written, fresh, damp. Inked or burned. Lena Cho. She staggered back. Elias looked down at his own name. Still visible on the coffin above. Still waiting. "Why us?" she whispered. "I don't think it's us," Elias said, voice hoarse. "I think it's remembering versions of us. Before." She blinked. Before what? He didn't know. And he didn't want to. He turned back to the stone just in time to see a new name appear, etched in silence, no hand carving it, just letters sinking into the stone like acid through cloth. It wasn't his. It wasn't Lena's. It was his mother's. Anna Granger. Beneath it, promise broken. Then the stone cracked. The cavity pulsed again, louder, bending the soil above as if it wanted out. The trees shifted. Not the wind. The forest itself. The air turned sour. Their tools vibrated on the ground. And then, violently, the soil cracked upward in jagged lines, like ribs snapping open. The breath below no longer waited, it was pushing through. You expect rot. You don't expect a second coffin that knows your name. The cracked soil gaped wide, a jagged wound in the forest floor. Elias dropped to his knees beside it, breath fogging in the sudden chill. Beneath the splintered roots and bleeding stone, a hollow chamber yawned open. It wasn't just a cavity. It was a room. He and Lena descended slowly, using the tree roots like a ladder. The air grew colder with each step, heavy with damp and memory. Their boots hit packed dirt, the ceiling barely 6 feet above their heads. Moss lined the walls. Roots spidered across the ceiling like veins. And in the center of the chamber, resting on a low stone dais, was another coffin. This one was darker, almost black, wax-sealed and stitched shut along its edges with red cord. The wax wasn't old. It glistened wetly. Elias stepped closer, hand already trembling. His name was carved cleanly into the lid. Elias Granger. No date. No symbol. Just the name. Deep, sure, exact. And beneath it, scratched hastily, messily. Lena Cho. It wasn't etched with care. It was carved like a warning. Lena fell back against the chamber wall, whispering, "No. No, that's not possible." Elias didn't answer. Because something inside was moving. Not shifting. Shuddering. Like breath catching in a sleeping body. He ran his hand over the edge of the coffin. Still warm. Still pulsing. Something shifted in the soil behind them. Elias turned, expecting more dirt to fall. Instead, he found artifacts. Dozens of them. Each resting gently in alcoves carved into the stone. Some wrapped in silk, others bare. A rusted hair comb. A military dog tag. A baby shoe. A locket. A cigarette lighter. A cracked glasses frame. Every object was labeled, a name and a word beneath it. George Hawthorne, forgot. Miriam Lowe, hid. Isaac Cho, lied. Anna Granger, broke. Elias froze at the last one. His mother's locket sat beside it, open. Her wedding photo still inside. The same one that had vanished with her belongings when she was buried. Lena staggered forward. "Isaac Cho," she whispered. "That's my grandfather." Her fingers brushed the dog tag. Her breath caught. Her eyes filled. Elias turned back to the wax-sealed coffin. "It's not just remembering," he said. "It's storing. Holding the pieces." For what? He didn't know. But the answer came anyway. The wax cracked, splitting with a sound like breaking bone. They jumped back as the red cord tightened, then snapped. 1 strand. 2. 3. The lid shifted. And the coffin began to open, by itself. 1 inch. Then 2. Inside was not what Elias expected. Not a corpse. Not bones. But a hollow space, lined with stitched fabric, identical to the first. But this one wasn't filled with soil. It was filled with ashes. Fine, gray, and swirling slowly, as if stirred by an invisible breath. And just above the ashes, suspended in the air like caught dust, was a heartbeat. Not a sound. A shape. A pulsing shadow, hanging weightless, tethered by silk threads to the 4 corners of the coffin. It beat once. Then again. Then, faster. "Close it," Lena gasped. "Close it, close it, close it." But Elias couldn't move. Because the ash inside had begun to take form. A head. Shoulders. Hands. No face. Not yet. Just a body. Rebuilding. From memory. The lid began to rise, on its own. Some secrets dig their own way out. By the following week, the forest was no longer quiet. Drones buzzed overhead. Reporters camped at the trailhead. Police set up a perimeter that didn't stretch deep enough to reach the chamber. Scientists brought scanners, linguists brought notebooks, and opportunists brought cameras. But none of them were welcome. The forest had tolerated Elias. Lena. A few others. Now it pushed back. Plants grew where no seeds had fallen. Bark split in the shape of open eyes. Devices glitched. Cameras melted. Power cells drained without warning. But the world wouldn't stop asking questions. The story broke online, living coffin found in forgotten forest, and it spiraled from conspiracy sites to national headlines. Elias and Lena tried to explain what they'd seen. No one believed them. Not until another coffin was found. Then another. And another. 7 in total, scattered across the country, buried deep in old woods or forgotten farmland. Each identical. Each sealed. Each whispering the same name. Elias Granger. He didn't know how. He didn't know why. But the third one opened on live television. Broadcast by a major news network during a controlled unsealing with full scientific oversight. Dozens watched as the wax cracked. The cord snapped. The lid shifted. The camera feed trembled. Inside lay a man. Gray-haired. Mouth sewn shut with red thread. But unmistakably. Elias. His skin was pale, but his chest rose slowly. His eyelids fluttered. One anchor screamed off camera. Another began to cry. And just before the feed cut, he blinked. The footage was pulled offline within minutes. The studio released a statement calling it a prosthetic demonstration. But no one believed it. Because the copy of Elias was too perfect. And the expression on his face was not peaceful. It was waiting. Lena locked the original chamber that night. Bricked the entrance herself. Refused interviews. Refused funding. Elias withdrew from public life entirely. He stopped answering calls. Moved out of town. Because one thing wouldn't stop. The dreams. He saw the stitched eyes. The broken locket. His mother standing at the foot of his bed, not aged, not decayed, but waiting. And the coffin. Always the coffin. Always open. He started sleeping on the floor. Started writing in the dark. He didn't want to remember. But the forest wouldn't let him forget. Every lie he told. Every memory he buried. It knew. Lena left one final message on his voicemail. They're not graves. They're promises. And someone's breaking them. Would you reveal this to the world, or keep it secret? The camera shut off, but not before he blinked. If you remember long enough, the forest remembers back. The trail that led to the Heartwood coffin was closed 6 months after the broadcast. No official reason. Just a fence. A lock. A sign that read, erosion risk, area unstable. But those who lived nearby knew better. The forest wasn't unstable. It was listening. No one saw Elias after that winter. Some claimed he moved north, off-grid. Others swore he'd checked himself into a private facility. But Lena knew better. His truck was found parked at the edge of the forest, keys in the ignition. No sign of a struggle. No footprints leading away. Just his field journal. It had been left open on the passenger seat. Pages water-stained, words barely legible in places. But one entry stood out, bold and clean. It remembers what I try to forget. Tonight, I answer. Lena never tried to find him. She took a position at a small research outpost, 100 miles from the site. She didn't study plant life anymore. Not officially. But every week, she returned to the edge of Black Pine alone. Not to the coffin. Just near it. Close enough to listen. And sometimes, on the coldest nights, especially near a full moon, she heard the knocking again. It wasn't loud. It didn't echo. It came from below. From the earth itself. Not frantic. Not panicked. Just patient. One knock. Pause. 2 knocks. Pause. 3. Like it was counting. And remembering. A month after the final broadcast, coffins stopped appearing. But whispers began, of other places where time bent, where memory broke. One ranger in the Rockies reported finding a bracelet in a tree trunk, sealed inside the rings, dated decades before the tree's growth began. A hiker in Maine woke in the middle of the trail to find old photographs arranged in a circle around his sleeping bag, photos of people he didn't recognize, but who all shared his surname. In every case, no one could explain the object's age. Or how they got there. Or why they all seemed to be watching. Watching him. The world moved on. The broadcasts faded. The fences rusted. The trees swallowed old paths. But the forest never forgot. Because it had always remembered what was buried. Not bodies. Not bones. Versions. People who were supposed to be one thing, but became another. And the promise each one had made, not to the world, not to others. But to themselves. And those promises? They had a price. Because some coffins weren't built to bury the dead. They were made to hold memories hostage. To remind. To punish. To wait. No one saw Elias again. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind doesn't move and the moon turns red through the canopy, something knocks beneath the roots. And if you listen too closely, you'll swear the rhythm matches your heartbeat. Would you have opened it, if it had your name too?